This is Front Up. I'm Jason Bridges, your host this week. We are lucky to have DeniseKronau here. She was just appointed to the Finance Committee, and I thought it'd be great to have you here to talk about everything, your background and your first meeting last night on FinCom. And so, Denise, tell us, where are you from? How did you find Nantucket?
Good morning, Jason. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
I found Nantucket in 1994.
Oh.
I was living in Germany. My husband and I came to visit my parents in upstate New York, and I thought, Nantucket, we've never been. It's only 4 hours away, so let's come over. So we came over for 5 days, and that started we need to be here every year.
Okay.
And in 98, we bought our first house. We were lucky enough to buy our first house here and rented it out like a lot of people do.
Yep.
And then came here off season and decided somewhere along the line that this would be the place we'd retire to. So now we live here year round.
So
I do. My husband's still working, but I live here year round.
Right. So you're coming here in the off season in the beginning. More,
yes. Oh, always on the off season.
Versus being here in the summer and then.
Yeah, we were only here in the summer 2 times. One time for 5 days, and then one time we rented a house for 2 weeks.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you're on the Finance Committee, you probably have some background in the financial world.
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I worked until I retired a couple of years ago. I was working for Siemens, and Siemens is a big multinational conglomerate. We do healthcare, energy, trains, light rail, information technology, digital things.
Wow.
And so
how many employees do they have?
I think now about 360,000 worldwide.
Wow, that's a big company.
It's a big company. And they're headquartered in Germany, but their largest market's actually the U.S.
Okay.
So I was the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer for their business in the U.S. And then I was also a Chief Financial Officer for one of their healthcare businesses. So, which was both roles had global components. So I used to travel a lot. So when I get to Nantucket, I like to just stay put.
Yeah. Were you also another Chief Diversity Officer as well?
Yes, I was. In my last job before I retired, I was the Chief Diversity Officer, and people always ask me, well, what does that do?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, yeah.
I'm saving you the question. What does it actually do? I used to explain to people that it's very important that every voice is heard in a company, not just the majority. Okay. So whoever's the majority in the room, and people tend to think of diversity as white men and everyone else, but that's actually not true. The diversity is who's the majority in the room. It could be all Indian people, and then maybe there's 2 people from Malaysia in the room.
Okay.
So it really depends on who's the majority, and then how does every voice get heard? Because the majority tends to drown out the other voices. And then I would go on to explain it's all diversity is very local, like politics.
Yeah.
And so what's appropriate in your country or in your market or in your business in order to make sure you're getting participation from everyone. Because in today's economy, you can't afford to leave 2 or 3 people on the bench. You need everybody to be able to pull their weight and contribute the way that they can contribute. And it doesn't mean everybody has a good idea, right? It's not true at home, so it's not going to be true at work.
Yeah.
However, if you think about your most frustrating days, they're usually the days you don't get to say something. It's not the day that your idea isn't implemented, because all of us know when there's a better idea, you'd rather see that implemented. But if you don't even get to talk, that's the days you go home pretty frustrated. So my job was to really educate, make aware, explain these things, and travel around the world to the different Siemens locations and put in programs and practices to get people to do better on that topic.
I think why make that leap from the CFO world to the Chief Diversity Officer?
Yeah, it's again, numbers tell a story. Mm-hmm. So obviously in finance there's lots of numbers, and especially ratios and percentages, all those things tell the story of trends of where things are going. But also in diversity. So if you take a look at let's keep it gender. Let's do gender. It's an easy one. And you say, well, in Congress right now, and I don't know these numbers, I'm making them up, but say out of Congress, only 6% is female, as an example, or 3% of elected positions are female, and yet the population is 50% female. So women would be underrepresented in that population.
Right.
So in diversity, we had the same thing. We would look at what are the numbers by age group, by education, by gender, and say, okay, is everybody represented, particularly as it relates to our customers? So are we having the right representation that can also identify with our customers?
Wow.
It's interesting.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, how all this applies to how you can help Nantucket and the finance committee, and I'm like, can you come help us at the handlebar? Can you come help us everywhere? Right? Just a great way of looking at things. Be able to read numbers, tell stories, but make sure all voices are heard.
Yeah.
That's
it's every voice should be heard. It's I think if I always think of any time I was ever frustrated in a meeting or at an event or somewhere where I was trying to participate, if I couldn't get my voice out there, I walked away thinking maybe it would have been different if I could have said something, or if someone would have listened to me, or if someone hadn't interrupted me.
Right.
Right? And listening is way harder than talking. I used to joke when I'd run my team meetings, because I've also been a chief executive officer of a couple companies. And when I would run my management meetings, everybody would talk on top of each other. And one time I asked, so tell me, what's the opposite of talking? And everybody goes quiet, right? They just kind of go, is she stupid? She's a CEO and she doesn't know the opposite of talking? I said, well, in this room, it isn't listening, it's waiting to talk.
Yeah.
Because you're all not building on each other's comments. You're all someone talks and then someone says something completely unrelated. So you weren't listening, you were waiting to talk. And it's hard to listen.
Active listening is very difficult. Like I'm sitting here right now thinking about my next question, but I am still listening, I swear.
Actually, active listening is exhausting.
Yeah.
That was probably when I was working, that was the hardest thing, because I'd go from site to site, as I explained, and I'd have to really show up, right? I'd have to be present every moment. And by the end of 10 or 12 hours, I would be done, right? I would be like, bleh, because to listen to someone, because that's the only time they're going to see me, maybe in a year. So people want to know that I'm paying attention. And I want to pay attention, but it's hard to not think about, oh, I've got all the lists in my head, and can I get to Stop and Shop before the parking lot's a Psycho place? And
So I see a lot of ways that you could apply a lot of this stuff to the finance committee and to Nantucket. So how do you had your first finance committee meeting?
We had our first finance committee last night, very efficiently run, I have to say. And it's going to be really interesting. I think what I like about, I'm very happy to be appointed to the finance committee, was because I think it sees everything about Nantucket. You know, numbers, everything has a financial impact. All the decisions that we make as a town, how we're prioritizing things, where we're going in the future. So when I was looking to join a committee, a town committee, I took a look at all the committees. I went through each one and decided, where was my best fit, both from what I know, so go with what you know. It's kind of an easy thing.
Yep.
I used to joke that I live by ALF, the alien life form, the TV show from the 80s, where he used to say, find out what you don't do well and don't do it. so I kind of live by go with what you know. And so my background fits with that. But also, too, I'm very interested to contribute to Nantucket as a community. It's where we're retiring. It's where we're going to, live the rest of our lives. So I thought, well, I'll be able to see kind of all the significant aspects of Nantucket by understanding the financial background of it. And also understanding that there's a lot of different communities here, a lot of diverse communities here. It's not just homeowners, it's renters, it's people who are coming in to make a better life. It's a really diverse community. And I think that will also be interesting. So I'm happy to have the diversity background to also help supplement the other things that potentially may come in front of Finance Committee.
Well, how did your first meeting go? Was it just a quick meeting to get started?
It was a quick meeting to get started.
Not much to report on?
No, there's not much to report on.
Okay.
So, it went very well. It was, I think, about 10 minutes in the end.
Okay.
So it was approving minutes and electing new officers and talking about some upcoming meetings.
Okay. What are some of your priorities for being on the FinCom, for Nantucket Financial? I know you only had one meeting, but what are some of your priorities?
So my number one is to listen really well.
Okay.
It's kind of taking a page out of your election playbook. But you have to listen. You have to understand because everybody who's gone before me is way more experienced than I am in respect of how this works. So number one, listen and pay attention. Number two, really understand, are we looking at, there's a couple things I think are always interesting, which is, do we understand the total cost of ownership of things? So I might be able to buy a pair of shoes, let's say, because I always have to take it to a simple example.
Right.
This is probably not going to be a good example as I'm running it through my head, but I might be able to buy a pair of shoes, but if it's a pair of shoes that doesn't match anything I own, I'll never wear them, so it's a waste of money, or I'll need a new outfit, which is then way more expensive than this pair of shoes. So that's the total cost of ownership of things.
What's the cost of getting rid of the shoes? What's the cost of replacing the laces?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I like to look at things not only in what does this one item cost or what does this one investment represent, how does it impact the other things that happen? And from that, then, what do we need to consider? Are we considering all the pieces? So that's one of the, so I guess if you say, I don't really have a priorities yet because I haven't been there long enough to prioritize things, other than trying to understand things as quickly as possible first. Okay. And secondly, to then say, okay, are we considering the total cost of ownership? Because that always caught me out before when I was working. We would make investments from our business and then go, oops, we didn't consider this. And now we have a problem. So, experience is a painful master sometimes.
Yes. Here's a fun question for you. Should a town spend more money? Should we spend less money? Are we under-resourced?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. And it would be such a speculative answer that it's going to sound like blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to decline to answer that one. Because I answered, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, you answered it, yeah. Well, you've also done a little bit of work with We Can as well. You want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, just being the work you've done in diversity and getting more women involved in local government, involved on the island. Yeah,
Melissa Murphy and Jen Cohen started We Can, which is Women Engaged for Civic Action on Nantucket. And I'm happy I could remember the acronym.
Yeah, well done.
There we go. And it's been really interesting to see. In fact, that's why I got interested to join Finance Committee. Because through that.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, well, I think I want to get more active on Nantucket, but I'm not quite sure how to go about it. So I went to the first couple of weekend meetings and met people who were on committees and thought, well, this seems like a great thing to do. And I have the time, so let's see how this can work. And I think they've done a great job of getting people engaged. You see a lot more engagement in general around the planet, not just in Nantucket. And I think starting this up has been a great idea from Jen and Melissa, and I'm happy to support it. We did one session with how do you speak up in public, because it's not so easy for people. So I pulled on some of our Toastmaster skills and because I used to speak publicly a lot, obviously in my prior life. And so from that, I then, put together some notes, and together with Patty Rogovine, she talked about the why it's important to be politically engaged, and then I talked about a little bit the how, and it was excellent. It was fun.
It's great. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. So thank you for coming and talking to us. Good luck on Finance Committee and being involved in Nantucket and We Can.
I'm very excited to be on Finance Committee. It's
cool. The island community is really lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Really kind. Thank you.